Tēnā koutou katoa, haere mai kia tēnei hui, ki te mana whenua rangitānei, he mihi nui, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good afternoon and welcome to the Extraordinary Planning and Strategy Committee meeting, where the main purpose of business today is to hear submissions on the speed limits bylaw. So just in terms of housekeeping, if there is an emergency, we'll follow our committee administrators out of the building. There's a defibrillator on the link span and toilets and facilities out there as well if anyone needs them. We will be operating a traffic light system where submitters have got 10 minutes, which includes time for questions. So the traffic light system is just over here. There's 7 minutes on green, 2 minutes on orange and 1 minute on red. If you are wanting to allow time for questions, please consider that within your time. Now I'll just call for apologies. We do have apologies from the Mayor for early departure on council business, Councillor Meehan for late arrival, Councillor Hapara for the meeting, Councillor Bowen for early departure. Are there any other apologies? Great, well I will move those, seconded by Councillor Hancock, and I'll invite you to vote. And that has carried 100%. We have not had notification of any additional items, so we will look to declarations of interest, and I haven't been made aware of any. Great. I haven't been notified of any public comment. Obviously there's lots of public here for submissions. So we will now move to item 5, which is hearing the submissions. And so I will move that we hear submissions from presenters who indicated their wish to be heard in support of their submission. And we'll just note that submitter number 139, the name was printed incorrectly. And we'll note the procedure for hearing submissions as well. So I'll move those, seconded by Councillor Hancock. Is there any comment? Great, I'll invite you to vote. And that has carried 100%. So we'll now look to our list of submitters, and our first submission is submission number 128, Christina Havel. Now this is on page 487. So Christina, just come down here. So there's just a button on your microphone to push, and when the light comes on, then that's on. And I understand you've got a presentation, so we'll just make sure that's available.
Just testing this is working, yep. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to talk with you this afternoon. The purpose of my short presentation is to address 3 particular issues around North Street and Colyton Road in Ashurst. The first being the dangers of the current speed limit in the following streets, North Street and Colyton Road. I'd also like to address highlight the dangers of not having any footpaths on either side of North Street and Colyton Road. Sorry. And I'd like to address the issue of no safe visibility for oncoming cars due to a new fence that's been put up outside one of the new subdivision houses. Oh, no, I think I've done something wrong. Which button do I click? Sorry. I did that. Thank you, sorry about that. Okay, so these are the two streets I'm talking about. I'm concerned mainly with the end of North Street that joins up with Colyton Road. This here is the intersection of these two streets. As you can see, the PowerPoint on the up there, the hill coming down from Colyton that joins up to the end of North Street that I'm talking about. The current speed limit along North Street is 70 kilometres an hour, and the Colyton end of North Street has no footpaths, and cars do speed along this road at speeds that far surpass the current limit of 70 kilometres an hour. It is a very narrow road with no centre line, as you can see from the pictures up there. Grass curbs, if you are forced to go onto a grass curb because a car is speeding past you, are uneven and full of potholes. Also, some parts are so narrow or non-existent that you have no choice but to actually stay on the narrow road. It's a picture of someone walking their dog. As you can see, there's not much space. The direction that he's facing is the Colyton end, where the hill cars can be speeding from down the hill and right into him. If a car's coming behind, it's a potential head-on accident there where someone will be hurt. Here's an example of cars coming up now. You can see there's not much room at all. That centre line there is as far as it goes. That white line doesn't go any further down this road. Again, you can see the white cars actually trying to swerve across the road onto the opposite side to avoid hitting the pedestrian. Now both cars are doing so. If a car was to be coming the other way, that would be a definite accident, especially the speeds that they go. It is an accident waiting to happen, and I am frankly quite surprised no one's been killed or injured yet. My neighbours and I can't let our children ride their bikes along this road safely. My daughter can't walk her dog on her own. They can't ride or walk to the dairy or the local library. I consider those things to be the right of Kiwi kids, being able to get out and do these things in their local neighbourhood. Now, I'd like to address this fence that's obstructing a view. As you can see, this corner here, this is the subdivision that's just been built. This fence comes right out, and from both ends, you have no visibility of cars or pedestrians coming. On the one on the far right, the third one, you can see the pathway that stops just outside the subdivision. So effectively, we are the poor cousins to the rest of that street because we have no pathway. So we are pretty much just left to fend for ourselves unless we happen to be down closer to the subdivision. To get from there to the subdivision pathway is quite dangerous. And I have witnessed my neighbours' sons trying to bike to school along this road. They couldn't go on the left side because there's no curb there at all. So they were on the right side going in this direction. They couldn't go the Colyton roadway, because that was way too dangerous. And a car came careering around that corner and narrowly missed both these boys. That's another view of, you can see the 90-degree angle of that fence, and I'm really surprised at how far it's actually jutting out. I'm not sure about the legality of that. Now, Colyton Road, cars and trucks speed down this hill at way more than 70 kilometres an hour and often have to slam their brakes to avoid hitting pedestrians, nearly myself and my husband and my children on more than one occasion. We've also seen a crash down the hill where someone's lost control on the corner and actually drove down into a paddock. We have also seen cars swerve across the centre line. This is another accident waiting to happen. We've lived here for 5 years now and have only seen police presence parked there to monitor speed once, and they didn't stay for very long. Okay, this is an elderly couple. I took a photo on Sunday morning of them trying to go for a nice stroll. As you can see, they're taking a nice stroll on a very dangerous stretch of road because they've got no choice but to do that to get to where they want to go, into the Ashurst village. Behind them, cars come down that hill very fast. See the 70k speed sign that's there, that actually continues further down that road for quite a way. Okay, here's an example of someone trying to walk their dog with the car coming down the hill. You can see it's heading towards the centre line to avoid, just narrowly avoiding hitting the person. And this blue car is going over the centre line, and this truck is doing exactly the same thing, going over the centre line. These are not safe roads. So what I'd like to ask today is that speed bumps be put along North Street. That, I think, is something that's quite an important action that needs to happen. Speed needs to be reduced to 50 kilometres an hour along North Street and at the top of Colyton Hill, not halfway down the street towards Ashurst Village. I'd also like to petition for pathways to be continued up both sides of North Street, not just up to where the subdivision ends, and I would like to request more police presence to monitor speed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Christina. Councillors, are there any questions?
Madam Chair, my signalling device isn't working at the moment, but I do have questions.
Okay, sure. If you could just signal to me, but Councillor Barrett. No.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Christina, for presenting. Would it be possible to have a copy of the presentation left for councillors' information?
Yes, definitely.
Great,
yep.
Thank you. And just noting your requests here, do you feel that a speed camera might be a useful solution there rather than a police presence? Or
yeah, that would be brilliant, yeah. Just something to monitor the speed so people are aware that they need to slow down. I think essentially what's happened is it's been like traditionally a rural road, but now it's become suburbia, and people are still careering along at this horrendous speed, and then they're having to just try and go into suburb, and it's not working, and it is really an accident waiting to happen.
Right. Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Christina. Can you give me an indication of roughly what sort of distance are we talking about to connect up to a footpath from your property? I'm assuming you live on Colyton Road, do you?
Can I just ask my husband, because he's better at that?
Oh. Well.
Probably about 300 metres, but we're on RD2 road, I take it, so we're not, I don't think we come under the footpath criteria, but the other side of the road, I think now has changed to 81, so we would just cross the road, use a footpath.
Mm.
So we'll allow people from the subdivision to access that road as well.
Okay, so we're talking a few hundred metres.
Yeah, thank
okay.
you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just having trouble with my machine. Thank you for your presentation. The photos were really useful in seeing the conflict in using the space. I just wondered over what kind of period of time you took those photos in order so we have an idea of the frequency of use.
No, that's fair enough. Good question. I took them all on Sunday morning, and that was actually a quiet time of the day. I could have easily taken them at another time to show much heavier traffic. So so it was just taken in one period of time. But even then you could see the traffic was building up.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. There's no further questions. We appreciate you taking the time to come in today.
Thank you, and thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.
Our next submission is number 101, Murray Guy, and this is on page 400. Kia ora, Murray. You can start when you're ready.
Good, thank you. Well, good afternoon, councillors. I'm here really to support some of the recommendations that you're making. I'm going to speak primarily about the two areas that I'm familiar with, and that is the Paetoa track, where at the moment you are proposing to reduce the speed limit from 100k to 80k, and I certainly support that. You'll be quite aware that in the last 12 months, NZTA and the City Council have added a wider shoulder to the left-hand side, which primarily was, I believe, meant to have been for cyclists. Unfortunately, all it's done is speeded up the road, and cyclists are quite concerned about the narrowness of that verge that's been added to the road and the roughness of it. So when it was done, I guess, relatively cheaply, although the price tag wouldn't say so. It was 3 or 4 million, I believe. But there are seams where the seal meets, and I've noticed that there's not that regular maintenance of potholes, to the point that I saw a couple of weeks ago where there were two serious potholes which would have disrobed or throwing people off their bikes. So it is not a safe road for cycling, and yet it should be, because there are more and more people now who are buying e-bikes. There is a growing community in that part of the city, and those people are generally quite environmental, and they are using e-bikes, and I have to say that it's not particularly safe. Yes, also be aware that the Paitoa track now carries a lot more traffic than what it normally would because of the closure of the gorge, and that is also providing obviously higher density of traffic and potential for more things to go wrong. So I certainly support the reduction from 100k to 80k. Now, speaking of Kingsdale Park, you're probably aware that I'm the developer there that developed that, and we designed those roads with a design element for 60 kilometres per hour. Up until about 12 months ago, the speed limit in there was 100k. It belatedly got reduced to 70k, and now there is a motion before you to have it reduced to 60k, which I support, and I'm sure a lot of our community does too. And you would have seen a number of submissions from residents within Kingsdale Park who are asking for that speed limit to be reduced to 60 or even to 50. And the same goes for Westwood Drive too, which is the other road in there at the moment. That's been very poorly maintained by council, and again, I would draw to your attention that there needs to be more oversight of maintenance on roads, particularly where there is a high use of cycling. It's not good enough to have roads and not maintain them, and it's not good enough to be encouraging cycling and not give them the backup in that maintenance. So I thank you for the time, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Murray. Question from Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Murray, for coming in and speaking to us. Just wanted to tease out a little bit more your comment there around the Kingsdale Park, Westwood, etc. And you're quite right, strong support for the 60 in the submissions, but quite a number that we're calling for 50. And you sort of raised that as sort of those two options as well, and just wondered sort of if you've got a view around that, I guess, whether going to 50 would be too far, whether it would be reasonable.
Oh, I think it's reasonable, and I don't think it's too far. I mean, we've got consent for 133 lots in there, so you can imagine there's going to be quite some traffic coming out there once we're fully developed, and it's all going in and all coming out the one way. So it's not that far removed really from a residential situation. In fact, we call it a lifestyle residential development rather than a lifestyle. So it is relatively high density for that lifestyle, and houses are generally in quite close proximity where they are, because as you'd imagine, there's a lot of environmental space where there are valleys and where you can't build, and the housing is in clusters and is like an urban development.
Yeah.
So yes, I would certainly support 50.
And can I just understand finally how much sort of ongoing interaction you have with residents there to sort of understand their use patterns and concerns that they may have?
I have quite a lot of contact with residents. I guess I have more than anybody else because I've developed it and I do my own marketing and selling. So I'm in regular contact with all residents. And I guess, not that I want to be, I tend to be the first port of call for any problems.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Murray. There doesn't appear to be any further questions, so thank you for coming in today. Our next submission is number 183, page 687, Chris. You missed the introduction, but I obviously don't need to explain the traffic light system to you, and you can just start when you're ready.
Thanks very much, and thank you, Murray, for making that statement that you just did about if you're going to encourage cycling, then need to make it safe for cyclists. Wholeheartedly agree to that, and most of what I'm going to be saying in a moment pertains to that as well. Does this thing work for me? Am I in control? Oh, wonderful, thank you. Overall, I agree with the recommendations on reducing the speed limits in Ashurst, Milson, Bunnythorpe, Pahiatua, Akaltri, and the only one that I really have any different view on is the Tenant Drive proposal. And I just want to show you a few photos, if you would mind looking at the screen. There's a couple of screens around. So this was just from Saturday, which is the day that I always go up to IPU and I ride my bike because that's how I travel, and there isn't actually an alternative route in this case. So you can see where that car is. And is this going to go forward? Do I press it? Oh, maybe I press it at that thing, do I? Now it should go. Thank you. Thank you. So there's the first one. There's the second one. There's the third one. These cars are doing currently, I think is it 70 or 60 there? Whichever. And look at that one. I'm glad I wasn't on the other side of the road going up that hill at the moment. This is where it starts to rise as you come off Tenant Drive, and by the time I get here, I'm usually not going in a perfectly straight line, because that's what happens when you're riding a push bike, not an electric one. You move about a bit to get yourself up the hill. So, you can see the preference, and that wasn't every single vehicle, but it was a fair few of them. I got a whole lot of other shots of other vehicles doing very similar things. And my point is that these cars are doing, I think, currently the speed limit is, what does it say? It's currently 70. Yeah, it's damn scary. Is it? No, it says the proposed speed limit is 60. Does that concur with what you think? Anyway, whatever the speed is, it's too fast, because you can see what the natural tendency of drivers is to do, and being in the cycle lane there is very, very uncomfortable. There's a law that's going to be coming into force within the next year, let's say, part of the Accessible Streets package of road rules changes, which will require that people give at least a metre space between themselves and passing a person on a bicycle if they're going less than 60 kilometres per hour, but 1.5 metres gap if they're going 60 kilometres per hour or higher. The proposal, as I read it, is that this would be reduced to 60 from the current 70. I exhort you to change virtually everything coming up to this point that you see on the screen to 50. And the reason, and so I'll just go on to the next slide. So I had to find out exactly what all these things were called, because some are on-ramps, some are off-ramps, some are east, some are west, and that's, I hope, clear to you there, and if it's not, I can send this to you, and the proposed speed. So I'm suggesting that as you come off at Serbet Bridge going towards Massey, that the speed be maintained at 50 until you get just past the point at which that Tenant Drive off-ramp east curves off up to go up Summerhill Drive. So then there wouldn't be any confusion, if you have, 60 and then dropping back to 50 and that problem of having changes in speed limit that are too close together. So I'm suggesting that you keep it to 50 all the way up to where the Tenant off-lane East Drive actually meets Summerhill, including that little bypass, because that's where, as vehicles are coming down the hill, their speed is probably a little bit towards the limit, and those vehicles coming off there, that's where they're meant to stop on the bypass before crossing over. But if they don't, then those speeds are just going to be that little bit higher, and if they're a little bit lower, that will reduce the result of any impact. And similarly for the Tennant West off-drive lane west, could also be 50 because, you know, they're going to have to stop anyway. So what's the point of saying 60 up there? And then 60 all the way around Tennant Drive, which I think is the proposal before you as well. So that's basically all I wanted to say. I'll just take you back to that. That is what I'm having to experience. I don't think that's making it either safe or feel safe for myself and others who do have to cycle up that road. One other minor point is that the little cat's eye things on that have been inserted into the pavement are actually on the inner of the two lanes, that demarcate the cycle lane, which is pretty nuts because people are going over the first line and not even noticing it, and they don't actually start to notice these cat's eyes, cars going over them, until they hit the second one, and by that time they're actually about there, really close. So if that could be addressed too, that would be really helpful. Happy to answer any questions. Sorry, a little bit rushed, but running between things at the moment.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chris. It's just an observation. By looking at your slides or photos, it seems like you are sitting right in the middle of the road while taking these photos.
No, I used a Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Not Zoom, you know what I mean.
The lens, you zoomed in.
A Zoom lens, yes, rather than, you know.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm still having some in and out issues. Thanks for that, Chris, and I'm liking the photos we're getting in our presentations today. I wondered if you observed a difference in behaviour when there was actually a cyclist in the cycle lane.
No cyclist came up there. They've all been scared away, except me.
But I'd imagine, I'm hypothesising, that cars wouldn't hang left quite as much if they saw a cyclist there.
You would sure hope not, but A, they have to see them, B, then they have to be considerate. And those can't be taken for granted.
Absolutely.
Which means why it's so scary for a cyclist.
Absolutely, I do not disagree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Chris. Just I suppose wanted to get your point of view on potentially sort of competing decisions we might face. So we've heard quite a bit about a desire for sort of consistency of speeds in spaces and then for lower speeds in spaces. So if we were stuck in a position where we could get those lower speeds, but only for fragments, should we go for the fragments or should we prioritize uniform speed environment?
There is a problem with having, you know, really short distances that have one speed limit and then another. You know, people just kind of don't notice it after a while. So consistency is important, but here I think I pointed out the way in this case where consistency can be achieved at the lower speed limit in a way that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you've, you know, this is an intersection, a whole lot of intersections coming together. Intersections are the places where crashes are most likely to happen. That's where speeds should be the lowest. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chris. There's no further questions.
Thank you very much.
And councillors, this image on the screen now was the one that was circulated as a missed page from staff as well. Right, our next submission is 190, Zanita Park, page 714.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for listening to me today. I should hopefully have a PowerPoint that I can talk to. Great. So I wanted to talk to you today just about one particular road that's of all the ones that you've been looking at. So it's Roberts Line North, and it's between Colyton Road to Railway Road. My reason for talking today really is to request that the speed limit is dropped from 100 kilometres down to 60 kilometres. So the current proposal that was that everybody could submit on was to reduce it from 100 kilometres to 80 kilometres. So this is now looking to reduce it by a further 20 kilometres. So there was a Bunnythorpe community meeting on Tuesday the 18th of August where this idea was proposed. It happened to be the one where we had 4 friends of the the two young doctors that were killed at the intersection of Railway Road and Roberts Line. They were talking there, and then afterwards there was a big discussion about the dangerousness of the road. And I would say that of the packed room, that probably 6 or 7 people spoke in support of the drop to 60 kilometres, and there was pretty much general agreement with everybody, no opposing at all. The reasons for wanting to lower the limit to 60 kilometres is essentially the stretch of Roberts Line is really dangerous. It's very narrow. It's got several blind dips along the way, so it goes up and down, and by blind I mean that when you're at the bottom of the road, you cannot see what's at the top, and vice versa. So that means, for example, if there's a cycle down the bottom or a car, when you're at the top you can't see it till you're meeting it, so that makes it extremely dangerous. And there's no shoulder all along the road. Another reason that's important to consider is so you've got Linklater Reserve, so it has a main, the main entrance is off Colyton Road, but it's an L shape. And just earlier this year, the second entrance opened and comes off this stretch of Roberts Line. We happen to live directly across from there, so we are very aware of this here. What we've seen over the course of this year, particularly during the lockdown, but then continuing from then, is that this second entrance has been used more and more. So we get quite a few cars now that actually pull off the 100k road and park on the grassy area there to use that second entrance. And part of the reason for that is that with Linklater Reserve, the front part that comes off Colyton Road is designed for children. There's lots of playgrounds, there's a swing bridge and everything, but then the other part of Colyton Road is more walking tracks, and people that have got big dogs, they don't like to bring them near the children, so they go to second entrance so that they can walk their dogs safely and not have them near children. At least that's my theory anyway, and they can let them off the lead and they run everywhere, and so it's becoming more and more common to use this entrance. We've always had a lot of cyclists down Roberts Line, but now that you can go into Linklater Reserve, that increases the number of cycles. And we also see people walking up from Colyton Road to the second entrance, which actually is highly dangerous because there's no footpath at all, and that would be something else to consider in the future. But for now, I'm just looking at the speed limit, but that is definitely something to be aware of. And the third reason is that there's tricky intersections at both ends of this short stretch of road. So you'll definitely know about the multiple fatalities that have happened at the Railway Road end, which have been very tragic. But also the other end also is very busy. You go on Colyton Road, which is 70 kilometres an hour, and it's getting just more and more busy to be able to turn that corner. So it's just a dangerous little bit of road. And then continuing on, some more reasons. So you've also got a lot of trucks and a lot of cyclists that use this road. There's an industrial area at the top. You've got foodstuffs and a whole lot of industry up there. And often the trucks will shortcut down Roberts Line and they just hurtle along. And then you've got the problem that you've got the blind dips and cyclists, and it's really, in our opinion, it's just an accident waiting to happen. So my hubby, he drives a truck, and he's had many occasions when he's come home quite white and said, I've had another near miss today. The road is so narrow that the two trucks can barely touch each other, and barely go past without touching, and then if you hit a cyclist as well, it's really dangerous. So our thoughts are that if you, the lower the speed, the safer really. So at least then there's a little bit more time to react should you see, should you get into an awkward situation where there's two trucks or two vehicles and also a cyclist. The other concern we have, and I've got a little map slightly further along here is just that the proposal also there is on Railway Road at the end, so where Roberts Line meets with Railway Road, that part of the road will drop to 60 kilometres an hour is the proposal. So what we would have then would be a choice for example, trucks at foodstuffs. They could either go down the safe wide road at 60 kilometres, or they could go the faster way at 80 kilometres down the more dangerous part of the road. Well, if you're in a hurry, 80 kilometres is a better road to go on, so we think people will make the choice to go down Roberts Line, even though it's more dangerous, but it's quicker. So we think that's a concern, that the fact that there's two choices, and yeah, we think it would be really good to have the same speed both ways at 60 kilometres either direction, and so hopefully you'll choose the safer one. This is just a little picture, so it's a little blurry. My hubby took it with the phone this morning, and he just happened to look out, and there was a track here, so you can see the bottom track. You can see how narrow the road is. The track only just fits on the road. You can see that there's no shoulder. They're just about over the white line. The top photo on the left, so it's very blurry, but there's actually a cyclist up there, and if you follow the white line up, you can see the trucks had to pull out way out to be able to get past that truck. Sorry, for the truck to get past the cyclist. So it's a really skinny little road, and this is a nice bit of the road where it's straight, so there's no blind dips there, so it's just dangerous in our opinion, and in many other people's opinions too, based on the Bunnythorpe community meeting. So really just wanted to say that if you were able to consider the 60 kilometres instead of the 80 kilometres, we'd really appreciate that. One thing I forgot to say at the beginning was that actually at that Bunnythorpe community meeting, we had a couple of the Palmerston North City Council traffic people there, and so they would have heard this, and we had, I think, one or two councillors there too that would have heard that. So I was going to say you may already be planning to do this, and if so, that's fantastic, but I just really wanted to make sure that you were aware that this is something that would be nice to look at. And this is just a tiny little map, which is a little bit hard to see, and I don't know if I have a pointer, maybe not. But anyway, just really pointing out that there's lots of hazards. There's railway tracks, there's the blind dips, there's Linklater Reserve there, and it's that little L bit is where the road goes past. And yeah, just a really dangerous road. So yeah, any questions?
Thank you, Zanita. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in regards to children, do you have children yourself, or do you know how many children are up that stretch of road that would be riding to school or riding to around the neighbourhood?
There's no children riding to school as far as I know, but we definitely see parents with prams walking up to the entrance of Linklater Reserve. We also feel, just going back to the footpath idea, when it was locked down and so there was no traffic, it was just a constant stream of people going up and walking around Linklater Reserve, so it's probably a resource that could be used better if there are more facilities like a footpath or a cycle lane would be fantastic as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Anita. Was just hoping to tap into your knowledge, I suppose, living there locally. A lot of those submissions that we've seen show a great deal of concern around the intersection of Roberts Line and Railway Road. Your remedy is the 60-kilometre-per-hour option. Some have actually proposed that we might consider closing off the top end of the road and basically creating a very long cul-de-sac up there. As a local, how would you feel about that?
Yeah, we think it's a wonderful idea. We're aware of the rail hub proposal at the moment that's at the end of Roberts Line. One of the proposals of that is to close off our road and several other ones. We just think it would be brilliant. We've got children the same age as the doctors that died in the car accident at the end of the road. We feel terrible, you know, the fact that there might be more accidents in the future. So, yeah, definitely that would be,
Thank you.
I think, a really good plan.
Thanks for that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Zanita. There's no further questions. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for your time.
Our next submission is number 198 on page 748, and we've got Nigel here to speak to that. Welcome, Nigel. You can start when you're ready.
All right, thank you very much. My name's Nigel Shaw. I'm the branch manager for TIL Freight, or Hooker Pacific. Previously to this role, I was the local milk collection manager for Fonterra for a number of years as well. So I've got a number of years looking after heavy transport in this region. So there's a couple of areas that I've made some comments on, and some of it could be summarised a little bit in the better design for safety, rather than when you're changing the purpose of a highway to include more cyclists and pedestrians. Do that in a way that makes it safe, rather than just changing the use of the road and affecting all the traffic on that road, and the effect on the journeys across the region. So, there's a lot of transport movements in this region, and inter-region, and that section through Ashurst, Bunnythorpe, Arkeltree, they're all key infrastructure routes, especially with the gorge closed. So the impact of, a minute or two to each journey might not seem significant by changing the speed of a zone, but economically, with vehicles that are using those roads consistently backwards and forwards, you can lose a decent chunk of time over the week and months and years. I can go into detail in some of the areas, but those are some of the key sort of themes that I'm wanting to present, that impact. Mulgrave Street was the first one I made a comment on, changing where the 100k limit is and pushing it further up a hill was the comment I wanted to make, that where heavy traffic is using that road, it's a strong link road, it's being improved through Ashurst to get through them promptly, that the heavy trucks moving up that hill are going to be stuck at 50 kilometres an hour all the way through until they get up to that passing lane, and beyond there, any traffic that bottlenecks up behind them will be impacted, and I think potentially creates more unsafe scenarios where people are frustrated from the length of time that they've been following a slower vehicle, and then when a lot of trucks that have a lot of power these days, they can accelerate reasonably quickly if they haven't got a lot of load on. So you'll get into the scenario where people cannot overtake, and at the end of the passing lane could seriously create some issues. There is only 2 intersections on that section of road between the passing lane and the current 100k sign. So I think the focus would be, do we need to design those intersections more safely rather than just affect all of the journeys that go through there, and is there any safety stats for that particular section of road where there is incidents? Question whether the purpose of that, is there actually the motivation to change for safety? The Tenant Drive, I commented that I support the simplifications of speed limits, the 50, 60, 70 back down to 60 scenario. It doesn't make sense. One speed limit throughout there is more sensible. So support that. Again, just in the interests of journeys across the district, once you pass the Massey intersection, there is no reason not to increase the speed limit from that point. From my view, there's no interactions with intersections or anything like that, so I believe the submission was to push that 100k right further away from there. So I'm suggesting let's be sensible, let's bring it to where it can be appropriate mix of improved safety and those journeys as well. The Milson Bunnythorpe, extending out where that 50k sign is to 400 metres further up the road. The current 50k section there where you come around a tight bend, it's uphill, certainly slows vehicles down going into there, and moving it 400 metres up the road. Again, I'd question, is there some safety evidence to say there's incidents there? Is there a motivation to change? Again, affecting journeys. It may not seem significant, but we've already been slowed down leaving Ashurst. We've been slowed down again moving into Bunnythorpe. Can we make these places safer to have good journeys as well as if there's a safety benefit needed, to gain that. The railway road situation there, I certainly support the change to 60 kilometres an hour through there. I had the fortune of attending that fatality a few weeks, with the two doctors, and certainly from, I've spoken to the driver that was involved in that, and there was little opportunity to do anything there, and we'll never know what happened there for sure, but there's a lot of major heavy industry that's coming through there now. Our facility is based in El Prado Drive. Countdown's being built there at the moment. There will only be more and more traffic there, and again, I think speed limit change will give some good consistency through there to the Roberts Line intersection, but potentially there's more design needed with better intersections potentially in the future with the much higher volume of traffic that's through there. Zanita made some comments on that Roberts Line North and the road width that's through there, and I certainly agree that that is a very narrow road. It is a very good shortcut. I use it myself daily, so blocking that off, I guess I wouldn't be in support of that, because the alternate is to go up to Bunnythorpe or through the congested streets of town. I think upgrading that to a better situation, and working out what to do with pedestrians and cyclists if we want them to be there, how do we manage them safely is pretty better. And potentially realigning that intersection as other intersections are around the place with railway lines where you put a big kink at the end of it and make people turn at a give way rather than that appearance of a straight through road which it has at the moment. I also call out the fact that we've introduced this multi-speed zones within a few hundred metres again. With the temporary there, it's 100 straight to 50, back up to 100, down to 70, down to 50 in town. So this is all within a 400 metre section. So I appreciate there was a knee-jerk reaction to do something to make it safer, but let's just think about some consistency of the speeds through there. We've got both ends of town now where we're going up and down in speed within a few hundred metres. And the Pahiatua Country. So I live in Pahiatua, so I'm commuting over here every day, and often using that route or the Saddle Road. And I've also been a committee member on the Pahiatua On Track Committee, so I've reached out to them and just sought their opinion as well. And certainly the concerns coming through were, again, the cut-off to the regional town. Pahiatua is a feeder town to people working over this side, and likewise back the other way. So there is growth of our city. It hangs a little bit on travel times to this area. So again, it might not seem like a lot to impact each journey by a minute or two, but over the long term, with people travelling day in, day out, you've got to make sure that the appropriate speed is in the appropriate place. If we're going to introduce cycle lanes and cyclists, let's do it safely, because the earlier gentleman said that the cycle lane's not wide enough and not in good condition, but also the traffic lane's not wide enough and not in good condition. So we've created this sharing of space that is not good, and we're saying speed is the only way to control it. Let's design it better. I think that is the main points I wanted to make. Any questions?
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Nigel. First, I appreciate you sharing your view around a potential closure there of the intersection around Roberts and Railway. But wanted to pick up, I guess, on more specifically on your views around speed there in those two segments of Roberts Line. You spoke in your submission to liaising with some of the other entities that also are responsible for some of the freight movements in that area, and some of those have submitted that they'd be comfortable with a 60 kilometre per hour. You've come in with an 80, and just wondered sort of what sort of interactions you had.
The intention was to support the 60 through there. I'm not sure if that's come
on
through.
Roberts line.
Yep,
You'd be comfortable with that going to 60?
Yep, absolutely. Those intersections that are there are busy intersections, and the 60 will be much better.
Great, thanks for clarifying.
Sorry if that came through incorrectly.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. There doesn't look like there's any other questions, so we appreciate you taking the time to come in today.
Thank you very much.
Our next submission is number 218, page 815, Dion.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Dion Martin. For the last 32 years, I've been a First Union organiser for National Distribution, which was merged into First Union. We're an independent trade union of 30,000 members nationwide. We cover all retail, we cover distribution, transport, logistics, we cover textile and clothing, laundry, paramedics. We are the largest union of distribution, logistics and transport in this country. And our organisers are supported by an industry coordinator. We have a strong delegate structure, in-house legal research campaign teams. We've developed a very close relationship, professional working relationship with many companies over the years. And today a lot of our union members play a critical role engaging with companies to ensure workers are treated fairly and respect. Health and safety is a big issue with our, in workplaces. We have about union members, almost 2,000 union members around Palmerston North area. These proposal by City Council was alluded to me by union members. I immediately alerted about, we have about 4 big distribution centres around. One of them was TIL, which you just heard from, the Countdown, and then there's the Foodstuffs and DKSH. So I alerted them, made sure they put submissions in. They were going to turn up, but a lot of them, when they saw that majority of people were supporting the submissions, supporting the proposal, they said, oh, we don't need to turn up. But I was trained, no, you still need to turn up. But that's their choice. So union members have been telling us that 100k speed limit has been far too excessive around this area. We have, I always encourage you to take a trip up El Prado Drive at the moment and see the number of distribution and transport centres of there. It's huge, it's just growing craziness. And one of the big ones is, at the moment, the Countdown Distribution Centre. It's got about 100 staff, and they're in corner of Mahari Drive and Makamaka Road. Our union's been really lobbying them big time. I was actually a union organiser when Countdown first, well, they were Woolworths then. They came from Wellington, and they decided that Palmerston North was the central hub. That was back in 1988. I was there. And they decided, and they came in and built that distribution centre on Makamaka Road, Mahari Drive. It was built up to 100 staff because they saw it, as a distribution centre going to Wellington, New Plymouth, the Bay, top of half of the North Island. But now they're about to build a big distribution centre, and to go and look at it, my gosh, the roof's up already, and it's massive. So just some numbers there. The present distribution centre at Countdown to DC is 12,000 square metres. It is going to be built by next year over 3 times the size. It will be 38,000 square metres. So at the moment, 100 staff, they'll get an extra at least 160 staff, moving towards 200 probably. Of course, this attracts more, cars coming in and cars going out, transport coming in and out. A lot of their distribution to all their 120 supermarkets nationwide is done from Auckland. They've got 2 big distribution centres in Auckland. But now with the big one here, a lot of the distribution centres will be going out to all around the bottom half of the North Island. So there'll be more transport, more cars, more trucks coming in and out. And we've been really, really concerned. I know union members have. We like people to turn up to work and be safe and go home. But, coming to work and leaving work is very important. And people are often they're rushing to work and then they're tired. loss of concentration, fatigue at the end of the day. And all it needs, coming out of that El Prado drive into Railway Road, I know it comes down from, 100, as Nigel was saying, to 80, then 70 and all that sort of thing. But it is very, very dangerous, that speed coming through there and coming out, going left or right as you come out. So I really encourage you to go down and have a look and just drive around that area. So there will be a significant increased volume of traffic coming in and out. So First Union totally supports the proposal by the Palmerston North City Council, and we say even go further, going to 60 years and then going to 80, Roberts Line North from Kelvin Grove to Railway Road, but we think we should be 60, and Roberts Line North from Railway Road to Richardson Line should go to 60. I know that you're doing this in 2 stages, my understanding. There will be another stage next year. So whether you move it now to 80 and then 60 later on, or go straight to 60, after the major accidents that have happened around there, where they are, I think it's time to go to 60 in those areas. So it's quite a big issue. I don't underestimate the effect that you as councillors have to making people come to work safe and return safely. This is a really, really important proposal you've put. It's about, the time has come. People, I know how people rush to work. They're late, and then they, as I said, I'm repeating myself here, but their tiredness as they leave. So so I think I've covered most of the. I've looked at one of the things interesting. Countdown's always confuses a lot of people. Countdown is Woolworths Australia, is the parent company. They own Woolworths New Zealand. Their brand is Countdown, and their trading name is General Distributors Limited. So it can be confusing for a lot of people. But they're about the 3rd largest company in Australasia. They own all sorts of liquor stores, places, and thousands of liquor stores in Australia. But this huge company, we want to encourage them to their business to come here, but it's your job to look after the safety of people when these volumes of traffic are turning up and increasing daily. And this is a very, very important proposal to look after workers and the safety of people coming in and out of these huge distribution centres and transport companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Down. First question, Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Diane. I've just got a couple of questions just around the large developments that you've mentioned. When are they due for completion?
They always say towards the end of next year, but I mean the roof's up now and it'll race fast, But I thought it was towards the end of next year. I hope that's the big Countdown distribution centre, the 3 times the size of the one now. It's on El Prado Drive, which is off Railway Road.
Okay. Just with your role with First Union, you would be aware of the increase in employees that will be working?
Oh yeah, there's going to be 160 at least, from 100 to 160. So you can see the number of people turning up. I mean, they're not all on the same shift, but they also, a number of casuals there too will be on top of that for different seasonal peak periods. So yeah, just the number of traffic's going to be coming in and out is huge. Okay. Not to mention the trucks and extra transport.
Okay, thank you. And probably just the last question, just in terms of your overall sort of, feel for traffic management, road safety. Yeah. Your view, I take it from what you've said, is that you would prefer a consistent speed limit.
Exactly what Nigel said. Yeah, the consistency of speed, and do it now. Rather than, I know my understanding is, I went to a presentation in Ashurst Library there, a big crowd from Ashurst were there, and it was a good presentation. They talked about two stages doing all this. I'd like to be done now rather than wait, but that's me.
Okay. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Madam Chair.
the construction people here as well, and on top of that, yep.
Thanks, Darren. There's no further questions.
Thank you very much.
Our next submission is number 254, page 940. Arshad. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
So you've got 10 minutes to speak, and that includes time for questions. So if you would like questions, then just make sure you allow some time within your 10 minutes, and you can start when you're ready.
I will be finishing before 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arshad Javed, and I'm working at Massey University in the School of Economics and Finance. I'm just teaching property-related subjects. So it's the first time I'm just attending any of this submission. Actually, the main thing for me was like, as a cyclist and as a resident of Palmerston North, I was thinking it will be good if we can reduce speed limit in some of the roads, so it can be more cycle friendly for the community. So we can, explore some of these surrounding areas which are like amazing to explore, but because of this high speed, some of us are reluctant to use those roads. And I was also the one who signed the petition for a share to Palmerston North, and I will be very keen to hear any good news. Like I saw that it was in the stuff yesterday, and the council discussed that matter, and hopefully that will be done very soon. These are the things which I think is, if we can make it our city as a more of a cyclist friendly, that will be great, and that will be a great image for us as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Saab. You said you want to see the city more cycling friendly. What speed do you think will make Palmerston North a cycling friendly city?
It's the first thing is we should have a separate cycle lane. That's the first thing. Or the first thing we can say is if we can reduce the speed limit, we will be having a budget for the cycle lane as well. So at the moment I'm not expert in the transportation, but I think it's based on the data which we have, and if we look at the 50 kilometer per hour as at the moment within the city, I think it's still it's quite reasonable, and having a distance with the cyclists, I think. But still, if we can reduce some of those, there are 70 and there are less than 100K limit in some of those roads. If we can reduce from 100 kilometers per hour to less, and we can have more cyclist lane, safe cyclist lane, then might be people can feel more comfortable.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Councillors, are there any other questions? No, thank you, Arshad, for coming in and speaking to us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have just had a little change around for our next submission, so we are going to move to submission number 232 on page 850, and that's Darsal.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darcel Nessa. I would like to talk about the intersection of Roberts Line and Railway Road from the Milson and Bunnythorpe area. On Wednesday, August the 12th, two best friends, 26-year-old Vinay and 27-year-old James, two doctors working in ED, were on their way to Wanganui to meet another friend of mine for brunch on their day off. Vinay left his house in the morning, hesitant to go, but obligated. He drove down to Kelvin Grove to pick up James from his house. Vinay and James are both competent drivers, as I have had them drive myself to and from home many times before. This Roberts Line and Railway Road intersection was new to Vinay, and it was not a route he would normally take. On their drive to Wanganui, James and Vinay were hit by a small truck, travelling at approximately 80 kilometres per hour, coming from the north of Railway Road. They did not make it to brunch, but they showed up at work, however, not as doctors on duty, but as two dead bodies. In 2018, Moira Collins, a local resident of Bunnythorpe and an active supporter of change, started a change.org petition after another tourist named Kasum also lost their life at this intersection. This petition has since gained over 4,000 signatures demanding an appropriate permanent change. This petition also came with comments of people's own terrifying near misses and accidents at the intersection, and how people actively avoid this route after their first time. I have also spoken at the public community meeting at Bunnythorpe in August about this road, and we urge the speed limits to be reduced immediately until a more permanent solution is put in place. And we appreciate the rumble strips have been added and the speed is now temporarily at 50 kilometres per hour. While these implementations are reducing the risk of another fatal crash, it still has not dealt with the systematic issue of the confusing layout of the intersection. There are other obstacles, including the different speed limits, a railway crossing before a stop sign, and a non-direct path across Railway Road that would still be at fault of another crash. What I want to suggest is a bit drastic, but I will believe that it might tackle the root of the problem. I want to suggest making the bottom half of Roberts Line a dead-end cul-de-sac, as mentioned before in this meeting, so that people are unable to use the Roberts Line to cross the intersection straight after crossing the railway track. No amount of speed reduction will completely eradicate the problem of the layout of the intersection being a deadly cause. This is a big change I'm asking for, but I want to remind that losing lives does cost us more. I work in radiation oncology treating cancer patients at Palmerston North Hospital, and every once in a while I get to meet someone come to our service after they first see either James or Vinay a few months ago back in ED when they were alive. The positive change, the presence that James and Vinay once made, is continually astounding and still affects every one of us whether we realize it or not. I have not just lost two friends, all of us have lost a part of ourselves in their tragedy. I am speaking here to try and make a change, to stop a misfortune like this from happening again, to stop people from worrying over their lives when they cross this intersection. Roberts Line and Railway Road crossing is a vacuum that sucks the life out of people who do not know what they're getting themselves into. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcel. Councillors, are there any questions? No, thank you very much. Our next submission is number 207, page 786, Tim Parkinson. Okay, he may not be here yet. Okay, we are moving on to submission number 230, page 841, and this is Shiva. And if you've got a PowerPoint presentation? Yeah.
Hi everyone. I feel like everything I was going to talk about has already kind of been talked about, but I'll just briefly talk around it. So my name is Shiva. I'm currently a trainee doctor at Palmerston North Hospital. I'm 2 weeks shy of being a fully qualified doctor. So before I begin, I just want to acknowledge why I'm here. I'm not usually one to frequent council meetings. I'm here today following the untimely and unnecessary deaths of my friends and colleagues, James and Vinay. I just want to talk you through my day on the 12th of August so you can understand the gravity of the situation for those who have never experienced the sudden death of a friend or family. On the 12th of August, I was effectively on holiday, but I decided to do a short 2-week stint in the hospital morgue, which is a forensic morgue with homicides and suspicious deaths coming to us from as far as Tauranga. As it was a Thursday and the second lockdown had just started the night prior, I knew there probably wasn't going to be any suspicious deaths that night. I got a message at about 10:45 that morning from the pathologist saying, "Hey, no cases tomorrow, but tomorrow's very busy. Come into the morgue at 8 a.m. I was really excited. I also got a message from my partner saying, "Hey, can you pick me up from the gym and drop me off at ED for my shift at 12? I drove to the gym and waited in the car. It took him a while. He finally opened the door and said something's happened. Me knowing my partner, he overreacts at the smallest things. So I was like, "Oh, what's happened?" And he's like, "Vinay's dead." I laughed. "Why? What has he done this time?" And he reiterated, "No, he's really dead. So is James. They were in a car crash this morning and the police are at the flat right now." I was still really confused. Surely this is a joke. I saw Vinay just 2 days ago, breathing, speaking, moving. How can that be? Then it dawned on me, and I messaged the pathologist saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry I won't be coming in tomorrow if the cases are from the MVA this morning. I know them personally." To which she replied and said, "I'm really sorry they were your friends. They're in good care." The death toll at this exact intersection is 3 in the last 2 years, all of whom don't normally drive that way. Something a lot of the locals at the Bunnythorpe meeting said was that most of the locals around here know that it's a tricky road. Unfortunately, it's those that are new to the road who haven't had that anecdotal advice are the ones who have lost their lives, and it highlights the lack of clear signage and warning here. I really think Vinay and James would be working in the ED today, like always, and I wouldn't have to be here if this intersection had been fixed after the first death in 2018. But unfortunately, that's not what's happened, and that's why I'm here. Because a lot of what I was going to talk about has already been talked about, I guess I don't really need the PowerPoint as much, but I'll just quickly go through it. So this is the intersection from Google Maps. So as you can see, the main problem with it is that it looks like, from here, it looks like a straight through. Your peripheral vision's just completely like blocked because your obvious side of line eyesight is going straight through, and you just don't see the traffic on Railway Road, which is exactly what happened to them. And obviously they got hit by a truck. This is just all the properties around this intersection, which we've just talked about, so I won't go over it again. So these were some of the potential solution ideas we had, a lot of which has been talked about, and to be honest, my favorite has already been talked about, so I'm going to go straight to that. The main things is reducing the speed to 60 both ways, so that's both Railway Road and Roberts Line. It doesn't make any sense to have 2 different speeds at an intersection, so I support that should be 60 both ways. And also that there should be signage, that this is a high crash zone, like that. We talked about that. We're not going to talk about that. And so this is what we were talking about before, and which is what I would support, that we would close off the Calvin Grove side of Roberts Line and effectively make it a T-junction. Although that would be annoying, it would be an extra 8 minutes to go. So I calculated this using Google Maps last night. So if 682 Roberts Line is the farmost property near that intersection, and for them to get to foodstuffs, usually it would take 1 minute if this intersection was open. If this intersection is now made a T-junction, it would take them 8 minutes to go all the way around and come out through Railway Road, which would be an extra 6.4 kilometres, but that could potentially mean that someone's life is saved. And in my business, that's more important than anything else. So, And also, I know there's been talk about the Kiwi Rail hub and how that's going to close off the railway road. And we don't know when that's going to happen, so I really think there needs to be a solution for this problem right now before more people get injured or died or so on and so forth. That's me.
Thank you, Shiva. Are there any questions from elected members? No. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Right, we are going to move down to submission number 210, Johann's page 799. So, Johann Erkens. Apologies, we are doing a little bit of reshuffling because we're ahead of schedule.
That's okay, Alicia. No worries. Can handle it. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not here to complain about everything or anything. I am a regular user of the roads in Ashurst, and I thank you very much for reducing the speed limit on those, because I have to walk sometimes on the road, and cars not always watch pedestrians. The only thing what I have a problem with is Hillcrest Road. You're going to increase it from 50 to 60k. This is for me, as you know, a rural road, more or less, made in the 70s. No lines, no markings on it at all. There are about 10 properties have the driveway onto it. And to increase that one to 60k, make it a very dangerous road. Because it is going from one side over the railway, from Napier Road onto the railway, and then up steep. It is just a curve over the top, and on the other side you go straight into Mulgrave with a couple of bends in it. You can't oversee the road at all, and I will suggest keep it under 50, please, or reduce it even further. Thank you very much. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, you've got off lightly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
All right, we are going to move to submission number 207, Tim Parkinson, page 786.
Thank you.
Welcome, Tim. So you've got 10 minutes to speak, and we are just using a traffic light system over here, so it'll be 7 minutes on green, 2 on orange, and 1 on red.
Okay. And you have a PowerPoint for me?
Yes, it should just be
cool. Thank you.
Loaded up now.
So thank you for the opportunity to present. Just to clarify that I'm presenting on my own behalf and not on behalf of any organisation. I'm talking about 2 of the parts of the plan, and I think it might be best, given the brevity of time, to take questions after both presentations. So the first one I want to talk about is the proposal around reducing the speed limit on Tennant Drive. I should perhaps preface this by saying that I'm not opposed to either of the limits that you're suggesting. I simply think that they're not going to address the safety problems which are inherent in both of them. So if we look at the intersection around Massey University and Dairy Farm Road, which is presumably the place which is causing the greatest grief to the council over this piece of road, then I think that the problem is not speed per se, it's the very poor layout of those junctions. As the previous speaker was saying, there's a number of roads have evolved over time, and this is one, and frankly, the evolution of that road system is past its best before date, I think. So that if you look at the intersections on that road, you see that there are a large number of crossing intersections, many of which have accidents, many of which have near misses, many of which have fender benders. I've been coming in and out of those entrances for 20-something years, and I've seen a lot of bad stuff happen there. So the problem, I would suggest, is not going to be solved by speed per se, but it actually needs a radical redesign of this, which is now, I think, the worst intersection in the city. And so my suggestion for you to consider is this, that you make this area between Dairy Farm Road and Massey Entrance into a large roundabout, that you close all of those ghastly little crossing roads, that those entrances are also closed, that new little bits of road are added to make that into a effectively one-way system roundabout, which will mean that all of those entrances have simple entrances and exits onto the road. The problem of crossing traffic will be eliminated, and I think under that circumstance that, using these existing roads here, I should have said, and under that circumstance, the proposed 60 limit, I think, will be very wise because it will ensure that traffic is going at a sensible speed before it comes to that roundabout. So that has written off a few $1 million of council budget, but nevertheless, that would be my suggestion for you to consider around the Massey Dairy Farm Road entrances. The second piece I wanted to talk about was the proposals in relation to Paulson Hill Drive and the Bush Track. Again, I have no opposition to reducing the speed limit, but I don't think that changing the speed limit per se is going to do anything. There is a small number of people who drive up that road exceedingly dangerously under the existing 70 kph limit, and I don't think that having an unmonitored 60 limit will make much difference to their behaviour. The problem is, of course, that there's a nasty intersection there between the Cowtree Drive and the Piatua track, and it's quite considerably shorter if you nip across the back way than if you go around that nasty intersection. So the problem, I think, is, as I say, not speed per se. It is that you have a quantum of through traffic who, because they're not residents, they don't have a lot of concern about the well-being of the... my screen's just gone blank, but I don't suppose that matters. They don't have a lot of concern about the well-being of the residents. My impression is that most residents drive up there reasonably sensibly on the basis that it's not terribly wise to poop in your own nest. So I think that the problem is primarily that of through traffic. And of course, we have that little bit of wiggly road, which those whose IQ is in single figures find it fun to drive up and down fast. So, again, my suggestion is that, in fact, we don't look primarily at a speed limit to control this, that we look at passive methods to manage the flow through of traffic on this loop. One obvious thing would be to make it for residents only. Now, I know that's an unmonitored thing, but even so, making it for residents only, or access only, so that light vehicles are for residents and heavy vehicles are HGVs for access only, doing work on site, etc. So that would be one strategy. The second might be some further sort of passive management things, because I don't think that simply monitoring speed will work. So there are various things that you can do. Surveillance is one way, but it has a high social cost, and I'm not very keen on surveillance. But speed bumps are cheap, effective. They seem to be really quite good at controlling antisocial driving, and there's some wonderful places where you could put some really wicked speed bumps, which would mean that those who drove too fast would go home without a sump. So that's really my suggestion for that. That, again, a 60 speed limit would almost become de facto because you've got traffic calming measures in place, which will mean that it's actually too difficult to drive at any speed beyond that. So those, ladies and gentlemen, are my comments. and thoughts, and I'd be very happy to answer the questions.
Thank you. First question is from Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Tim. Can we go back to the first slide? I'm a bit confused. You are closing down the main entrance into Messi.
No. What I'm doing is, I'll see if I can get, is there a thing that on this for doing a red dot? What I'm suggesting is that, I might just come up to the screen actually, if I may. What I'm suggesting is that the problem with the Messi entrance is not these two roads, which are fine. It's that one where you have to cross to get onto the main entrance road. So you would close that because it would become superfluous, because you either exit onto the roundabout or exit from the roundabout into Massey. So the ingress and egress of the university would be the same. It's just that you've changed the way in which the particularly outgoing traffic flows. Does that make sense?
And you're closing any further approach after that main drive. You can't go on Tennant Drive straight.
So the entrances down here would exist as normal because they're already a well-planned entrance. It's simply to deal with this crossing entrances, crossing traffic, thank you. This crossing traffic through here where the accidents take place.
Okay, thank you. And secondly, on Highway 57, you are suggesting to put speed bumps on a 100-kilometer road.
No, on the turn-offs into Paulson Hill Drive and onto the bush track. We clearly can't put speed bumps on a 100k road, but speed bumps on those two, on that cut-through section would, I think, curtail the number of people who wanted to cut through it.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next question is from Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tim, for your two different elements of your presentation. My questions are really about the bush track Paulson Hill Drive suggestion. So I read in your summary that you live on that intersection right there. I wondered if there been any wider community discussion around the proposals that you're...
No, as I said, I haven't, I'm not presenting this on behalf of any group. There is a neighbourhood watch group which discusses traffic around there periodically, and I think that there is a general consensus that something, in inverted commas, needs to be done. And some of these things have kind of come up in ad hoc discussions. So what I have said is my distillation of those views, and of course my own for that particular place where I live, but it's not a community representation.
Thank you for clarifying. And secondly, around the concerns you raise about heavy goods vehicles, are there a lot of heavy goods vehicles used that?
No, they're not. But those who do manage to make a conspicuous presence of themselves. I mean, it is not a volume problem. You know, we're not talking about hundreds of vehicles going at 100 kph every day. We're talking about small numbers of vehicles, but who drive really quite badly. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That helps me understand the point you're making.
Final question from Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Tim, just a couple of points of clarification. The shortcut Paulson Hill through to the Pai-2 track, how many kilometres is that?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think it takes about 1 or 2 k's off the loop.
Okay. And in terms of, like if we put traffic calming devices in there, like for example speed humps and things like that, how would you envisage that's going to manage the length of that piece of road?
Well, I think it's, I'm sure that there are rules about how you dispose of speed bumps on roads. But I think if you look at some of the other roads, I mean, I think that Centennial Drive would be a very good example that those speed bumps, although there's only relatively few of them, they've actually been remarkably successful at calming traffic. So my thought, and I don't know if you can do this, but my thought is that if the wiggly bits at each end were the bits which most attention was paid to. That would actually be quite a deterrent to people coming up and down those roads for the fun of it. Otherwise, there's a few places on the straights where you could pop them in, but my guess is that those parts at each end where it joins the two main roads would actually probably give you the best bang for your buck.
Thank you, Tim. We are now out of time for your submission, but we appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Our next submission is submission number 199, page 753. The submission is from Caitlin Pemberton, but I understand we've got Craig here to speak. Great, welcome, Craig.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just on behalf of my daughter, who's surrounding me at the deep end. But I'd just like to bring a point that would the council be willing to look at Old West Road? I know it's not on the program, but that is a very serious piece of road. So I can just take you through it from Summerhill. If you go into Old West Road, you come across Turitea Road, which is a big intersection, and it's on a funny angle, and cars coming from Massey have got to wait in their lane before they can get in. So you go past that intersection, and then you come down the hill to a bridge where there's a park where walkers park their cars and dogs, and they're crossing the road and going everywhere. Then you go over the bridge, and you've got a Massey driveway on the left, a Massey driveway on the right, and a substation. Then you go up the hill, and you've got the Massey main entrance, which that is horrendous sometimes when you're coming from Linton and everyone's trying to pop out in front of you and you're coming at 100 k's down, and there's been quite a few accidents there. Then you come up the hill and you've got a huge blind driveway with numerous vehicle movements coming out of that driveway. I think there's 3 houses come out of that. So you can't see, when you're coming up the hill, the cars that could be coming out of that driveway, and they can't see you. And then you move along to another driveway, which is our infamous piggery. And there's numerous vehicle movements coming out of there at the moment. I don't know what's going on in there, but there's trucks and cars and everything coming out of there, and they've got to get onto Old West Road, and they've got to get off Old West Road into that driveway. And then the main part of my presentation is the school. So you come to the school entrance, which is on the right, is on a sweeping bend, and I've been here before talking about this, and I don't know why that is not 80 k's, even just there. I would like the whole road to be 80 k's, but if it couldn't be, at least at the school, because I've got a photo here. I've got nothing to present because I'm a bit late on it, but on the weekend, the main road was blocked with cars both sides of the road because it was calf day, and people walking across the main road, and no one that drives down that road drives less than 100 k's because I think it's a racing track, and there was just people going everywhere and cars weren't paying anything. And in the morning there's probably about 10 children waiting on the outside of the bend at the school entrance to catch the college buses. Now, I've seen cars come up from Linton and go wide on that bend and go into the grass where those kids are standing. And it's been like that for years and nothing's been done about it or looked at it. And I've had no hope of getting through to transit, which I understand controls Old West Road, and I don't know whether the council has any control over that. And then we come to our drive, which is just past the school, which is just about totally blind, and I think David's even come out of that. And so from there down, there's other blind driveways with numerous houses down those driveways, so there's a lot of vehicle movements out onto Old West Road. So I would like to propose you look at, if you can, trying to get Old West Road as 80 k's, or even to the school would be a great help from Summerhill to the school, because there's just so many vehicle movements on and off Old West Road, and there's been numerous accidents down there, which I've attended the last one. It went into an Armco head on, and then that Armco was bent out onto Old West Road, so it was facing the oncoming traffic, and that wasn't fixed for probably a week. So the traffic had to sort of veer around it. So yes, I'd just like to propose that the council could look at Old West Road as a speed issue.
Thank you, Craig. Just to note that Old West Road is a state highway which is governed by NZTA rather than the council, but our Acting General Manager here has just made a note that we can raise this issue with NZTA and pass the submission on to them as well.
Yes, and if they'd like to talk to me, and yeah.
Sure. We do have a question from Councillor Barrett as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Craig, for coming in and covering for your daughter as well. I did just want to explore this a little bit around the interaction with the transport agency, and noting now that officers are planning to make some inquiries on our end. Did I hear correctly that you had tried to contact NZTA before, though, as well on this? And
when we used to have ward meetings, we used to be quite vocal.
So could
my
you give us
parents and myself, because it used to be just a small track, Old West Road. So, yeah, I've been here before talking about this, but nothing. We even wanted to pay for the signs ourselves, you know, for warning for the school even, and they just wouldn't even look at that.
Could you give us a sense of how many years you've been asking for this?
30, 25, 30. Yeah.
Great, and in that time, no help from NZTA?
Nothing. Like there's dangerous trees like that are actually coming over the road, like big ones, huge, and they won't even look at those, and they are being undercut at the moment, and I get nothing from them. And Mr. Whitelock, when he was helping us, when he was active, and he went a big way into helping us, trying to get people to come and have a look, but nothing ever happened. But it's just the school is horrendous, because it's bigger, it's getting bigger.
Noted, thank you, and appreciate knowing the history there. 30 years, that's quite substantial. Right. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Craig. There's no further questions.
Thank you.
And now, councillors, our final submitter is on their way, so we are going to adjourn for 10 minutes and give them some time to get here. In fairness, that we had arranged a time with them, so we'll be back at 10 to 3.
The council's trying to give quite a substantial project there that would actually really quite substantially renovate that whole transport space as well as
All right, moving on to our final submission today is submission number 217. This is on page 813, and we've got Chandula. Afternoon. So we've got 10 minutes for you. We've got a traffic light system just over here. So there is 7 minutes on green, 2 minutes on orange, 1 on red, and your 10 minutes includes questions if you're wanting to take questions. So just factor that into your time, and you can start when you're ready.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Councillors and members of the public, I appreciate your patience in waiting for me to come here today. I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Chandula, known to friends as Chanzi, and I'm a doctor in the emergency department at Palmerston North Hospital. I'm taking time out of my shift today to present on account of the tragedy that saw the loss of 2 of my colleagues and friends, James Huang and Vinay Angadi, at the intersection of Railway Road and Roberts Line on the 12th of August this year. I was fortunate enough to get to know the both of them through their work as doctors and more personally as friends. James was a kind-hearted soul who always stayed well beyond his shifts, ending time in ED, making sure each and every one of his patients were taken care of prior to his departure. Softly spoken, he wanted nothing more than to be a great GP for the Manawatu region, and he had been looking forward to starting his training towards the end of the year. Vinay, on the other hand, was a goofy but confident man who always spoke his mind. Not only did I see him around at work, but he was also my flatmate throughout this year. He was very much someone who was always learning and growing, and although we often disagreed on in matters in life and we competed for similar career goals, we bonded over our shared cultural experiences, and I deeply appreciated that he was always striving to make himself a better person. The two together made a mismatched duo, even to those viewing from the outside, but whom in reality were the best of friends. James was even Vinay's next of kin on his emergency contact details. As you've heard before, they were off to attend a brunch on their days off and were not familiar with the road layout when the truck struck them at 80 k's an hour and brought their short lives to an end. Unfortunately, that patch of road is notoriously famous for the 10 crashes it has seen, alongside the prior death of tourist Kusum Sarin. Anecdotally, it was also known for its frequency of near misses by residents and Palmerston North locals alike. What I want to make abundantly clear is that it is not simply people who are unfamiliar with the intersection who are experiencing these crashes, as the intersection is designed to punish you for even a moment of distraction. Firstly, as you come from Kelvin Grove up Roberts Line towards Railway Road, you're travelling at 100 k an hour along a very narrow patch of road with falling banks on either side, forcing you to concentrate on trying not to drive off the sides, while at the same time having to drastically reduce your speed as the intersection rapidly nears its head. As you approach the intersection, you'll come across the railway line and all its signage that effectively blocks your view of the stop sign that is set up within a few metres after the railway crossing. As you then come over the hump on the crossing, your line of sight is then automatically drawn towards the continuation of Roberts Line because of the way the intersection is awkwardly positioned, and you tend not to notice that there's a road in front of you. If you finally then drive forward without adequately checking, then you're met with oncoming traffic travelling at 100 k an hour who do not have a chance to stop in time to prevent a crash. Effectively a Swiss cheese model, you can already see how a small number of errors can lead to someone eventually making the big mistake that could cost them their lives. For these reasons, a group of my friends and I presented our case at the recent community hearing, and it was heartening to see that following this, the council has heeded our words alongside the wishes of 4,000 others who signed the petition run by Moira Collins, pleading for change on this treacherous patch of road with the installation of rumble strips and temporary speed limits. However, as I said before, it does not solve the inherent issue that lies at the centre of it. The simple fact of the matter is the intersection has been set up to fail from the get-go. My proposal will be to ultimately seal the end of the Roberts Line coming from Kelvin Grove, leading into Railway Road, eliminating the intersection completely, and leaving behind a T-junction involving the top half of Roberts Line after the crossing and Railway Road. Not only would that not interfere with the railway as it stands, it requires the least amount of work on the road itself. I also calculated the time that people normally taking this route would have to take in order to divert via Kelvin Grove Road to reach the same place if this were to occur, and it ends up only being a mere minute of extra time, which, frankly, to reduce the number of deaths, I think that's completely acceptable. But I also understand the process of changing the road requires further investigation and approval, so in the interim, I propose a change for the speed limits around the area, extending from Roberts Line, leading into Railway Road, and then onwards via Roberts Line North alongside the Railway Road from the airport through to Bunnythorpe, to just simply be a blanket 60k an hour road, rather than the proposed 100 to 70 and the 100 to 80k an hour. My reasons for more drastic action than what's been proposed is, firstly, this reduces driver confusion brought on by a variable speed zone. Secondly, it makes it safer to drive along the Roberts Line stretch of road. And thirdly, as the intersection stands, crashes are still a possibility. However, it gives drivers more of a chance to react, helping to reduce fatal fatalities. In my field, I see the aftermath of road traffic accidents on a regular basis, at least those that are lucky enough to make it out of the crash to get to me. If we can make a system-wide change to help bring that number down, then we would all be doing a much better service for our community. Once again, thank you all for giving me these moments of your time, and I look forward to your response to the submissions today.
Thank you, Chandler. Councillors, are there any questions? No, thank you very much for your submission and for coming in today.
Thank you.
So we'll now move through our agenda to the confirmation of minutes. And I will move that both the Part 1 and Part 2 minutes be confirmed together. Seconded by Councillor Petrinas, thank you. Just a reminder, if there's any discussion on the Part 2 minutes, we will move into Part 2 to confirm those. Is there any comment on the minutes? Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So in point 4020 on page 12, there's some narrative discussion on some of the debate that occurred during the future use of Huia Street Reserve. And I just wondered why some of the debate was recorded, but not all. So there are some points that were made by some members about, for example, they were deciding on the first step of a process to enable the development of the land, but there are no points listed that were opposing, and I wondered why that was.
The administrator who took the minutes for that meeting is not here today, so we can make a note of that. I think it's a valid point to raise around how we are taking minutes, and so I'll raise that both at the agenda meeting, but also speak to the committee administrator about that.
Yeah, because obviously if we're going to record points of debate, which I don't have an objection to, all points of debate need to be recorded, not just some.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on the minutes? Great, I'll invite you to vote. Sorry, that has carried 10 in favour, 1 against and 1 abstention. And I'll just advise the General Manager's just suggested that we could possibly have a review those minutes before the recommendations go through to Council later in the month. Right, moving on to item 7, the draft speed limits bylaw summary of submissions. We've got Julie McDonald here to speak to this, and this is on page 17. Kia ora, Julie.
Kia ora koutou. Nothing further to add to this report except to remind you that the deliberations report will be coming back in December, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Julie, for the brief report. Just interested between now and deliberations to understand a little bit about what further analysis of submissions might be undertaken.
So as always with the submissions process, there's an extensive pulling out of themes and analysis of the general responses, taking into account all the comments that have been made here today, if there are additional points made. Because this submissions process is essentially lots and lots of little consultation processes, we'll be trying to bring as much detail as we can. But we've provided that high level, the summary graph, so that you can see the way the wind is blowing in terms of the submissions so far.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Julie. Just a little bit of clarity just around the variable speed zones around schools. Not all schools are covered. Could you just comment on that, please?
No, that's correct, but I'd ask Chris or Peter to comment further about that.
Yeah, so currently under our existing speed limits bylaw, 15 schools, I believe, are covered. That dates back to 2013. We haven't included any variable speed limits in stage 1, which is the process we're doing right now. The intention is to include a review of further variable speed limits for schools in stage 2, which is scheduled to start fairly soon.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Julie and Peter. There's no further questions. So I will move that we receive the memo draft speed limits bylaw summary of submissions, seconded by Councillor Hancock. Thank you. Are there any comments? Great, I will invite you to vote. Oh, my apologies, Councillor Finlay's just slipped in there.
Just one very quick comment. I presume that the Westmont School area will be taken out because it no longer exists. On page 22.
Thank you for your comment, Councillor. That will be noted and included in the presentation of the recommendations for adoption in December. I will invite you to vote now. Can everyone check they've voted, please? Great, that has carried 100%. That concludes our business for today. Nō reira, na mihi nui kia koutou, ina mana, ina reo, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.